I've allocated every asset that I can into Bitcoin. It's a lot easier to learn how Bitcoin works than to learn how Federal Reserve swaps work. I think Bitcoin wins because it's a better system. It's not centralized. It's based on rules, not rulers. My goal is to live my life with integrity. Systems that have clear rules create an opportunity for people to have success.
I actually today quit for good my normal job because I wanted to dedicate my full life now to Bitcoin.
They have something that they're passionate about, and then they have something they do for money. Like, that's their purpose. The real magic happens when you can blend passion and purpose.
I just want to, before we start with Bitcoin and Satsaver and all this fun stuff, and we talked a little bit about that before, and I saw it on your website that you have 7 kids, and with the eight on the way, and it's really fascinating for me to see a lot of Bitcoiners being that kind of traditional, having that traditional values in their life. How do you see like the connection maybe between Bitcoin and having the traditional value mindset and having kids and doing the stuff you're doing?
I think that people are seeking truth. I'm certain types of people. My goal is to live my life with integrity. That's kind of like my kind of fundamental word I would utilize to describe what I want to do with my life. And I learned that through having a larger family, my heart has really turned towards my family. That's probably not, it sounds a little emotional, but as I've had more kids, like, I love my kids more individually and collectively, and I really want to build something great with and for them. I don't want to just send them off into the world just to start from square one. So that's kind of like the functional component of it. But why do I want to have a large family? Man, I feel like if you look historically, people have always cherished their family, their children, their offspring, bloodline might sound a little removed, but the more children I have, the more I care for them, the more excited I am about the potential that we have collectively. But ultimately that requires me to live a life of integrity, or I'll just give them, I want to give my kids tools, not baggage. So parenting is more about the growth of the parent than the child. And in my family, I've had to become a better person to effectively serve their needs and lead them. So I think I think it's seeking truth, and I think the lie of small families or families being too expensive or whatever, if it matters enough to you, you'll make a way. But at the end of the day, everybody's got their own decision to make about that. And I'm not trying to force that because it's a deeply integrated idea in society.
Yeah, it's fascinating how this modern technology, Bitcoin, is so tied to this traditional values of having a lot of kids and having those kind of families. But you also, as you told me right before the podcast, full time on an RV and jumping from Airbnb to Airbnb, and that with 7 kids, soon 8. That's really, really, really cool. How
Yeah,
are
it's
you
pretty
doing that?
wild. So, we've been full-time RVing for about 5 years. We're in an Airbnb right now, but we're about to get back in the RV. I just had to make some adjustments to it. We've loved it. We moved out of a 7,200 square foot house with a pool house and, fancy cars and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of, it was great, but it was also kind of meaningless. And so when we jumped into full-time RVing, man, it just brought our family so close together. And we started when our 5th child, his name is Swift, when he was 2 weeks old. And we, not Taylor Swift. I have to throw that out there because she's in the news. Jonathan Swift was
Okay.
a kind of old school satirist and anyways.
Yeah, there's the two
Writer.
Swifts. There's like Taylor Swift and there's like the Swift banking system.
Yes, hey, there we go. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, so it's been awesome, our kids love it. Right now, after this I'll take my oldest 3 boys to football practice. but we do homeschool. I mean, we do all that kind of stuff. We try to avoid seed oils. We eat a lot of steak. And those are things that we kind of came to, prior to Bitcoin, to be quite honest. I mean, they just kind of, they're just, if you take responsibility for your own life, you start to figure things out. And I think that's one kind of root thing about Bitcoin is people are tired of trusting other people to do the right thing with their finances. And with truth, if you will, we have to kind of make sure that the decisions that we're making are accurate, because there's real consequences if they're not.
Yeah, and it's also with the full responsibility. I mean, you have 7, soon 8 kids, and I guess the kids are not producing income at the moment.
Yeah, not yet. Well, and so that's the thing too, I want to get good at being together as a family. I feel like that's one of the more, I feel like that kind of idea of just like actually developing like a healthy family relationship isn't really focused on a lot. And in so doing, we can work through a lot of the issues, learn to respect each other, and hopefully we could do some great things together. But yeah, and so funny enough, we only have one girl.
Oh, that's an interesting rate.
It is.
And so the
Anyway,
eighth one is also gonna be
that's a surprise. We don't know yet. I'm pretty good
okay.
at reading sonograms though, so I know what it is, but that information has not been disclosed to my wife even. So
Okay, we'll see how the rate is going.
yeah.
And which I was getting at is like having so many kids is like almost having a small company where you have to like make sure to be financially responsible to everybody. So then you
Yeah.
don't let anybody down. And it's even more hard because in a company you have employees and the employees are producing income, they're making something productive. A kid till a certain age is just, it's hard to say it like that, but it's just eating
It's an
from
investment part,
an
like
investment. Yeah.
you're putting all the resources into building like one of the best assets that you can be a part of, right? I mean, I can't control them. They have their free will to do whatever they want to. And but I just want to show them there's a really great way that we can live together. But yeah, no, I truly believe that, like, just like a company with employees, the employees are assets of the company, you know and I believe that children are assets, not liabilities. And so if I expend my time and effort and resources to develop these individuals in the best way, nobody cares more about your kids than you do. I mean, unless you're doing it wrong. But my goal is to really develop, do what I can to equip my children. And like I said, I want to give them tools, not baggage. I'm 39. Uh, I was raised by the government schools, and I know there's a better pathway. I want them to stand on my shoulders and learn the lessons that I've learned. And they obviously have the opportunity to make their own decisions later down the line with whatever path they'd like to take. But they're assets, and I want to invest my time and energy building them up.
So I guess they are also homeschooled as so many kids from Bitcoiners.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we've been homeschooling. We've actually spoken to a couple of homeschooling conferences, but we've been homeschooling for, goodness, since our oldest is 13. Our youngest is let's see, about 23 months now, and we've been homeschooling since my oldest was about 6 years old. So
And how do you go ahead and learn your kids about financial responsibility, about Bitcoin? I mean, they are really young though, but it's like,
yeah.
do you do something for them even in that young age?
So I mean, I think a lot of the things that we talk about in Bitcoin are first principles. Like, what's the foundation of your thought process, and why is it like that? And so, um, I'll give you an example. We were driving in the car yesterday. Things started getting a little wacky in the car, because if we don't direct that energy in a meaningful way that they can jump on board with, then things can get a little crazy. I got a lot of boys. I actually have a friend that has a lot of girls, and he said, in our house everybody screams and is really emotional. Um, And his brother had a lot of boys, and he said, in my brother's house, everything's broken. So there's a lot of energy with a preponderance of boys. But we started talking about simple machines. So we started talking about the screw, the wedge, the lever, and the pulley. We started talking about these different things, and we just started establishing like some fundamental tools that they can use to solve the problems that they face in life, right? So, and when it comes to Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin's a really beautifully developed system. Why? Well, we can just look at the free market, and the free market says it is, first of all. So then we can extrapolate why is it surviving. And a lot of Bitcoiners before it survived and thrived analyzed those aspects of Bitcoin and realized that Bitcoin does things better because it's an incentive-based system that's just. It's based upon clear rules that people can understand, or will be taught. You run into a wall enough times, you'll stop doing that and you'll take a couple steps to the side and pass through the doorway. So I think that's what's going to happen. A lot of people are going to have bloody noses before they wake up and realize that they can't just go through the wall because there's a door drawn on it. They actually have to pass through the path of least resistance. And that's what Bitcoin has provided, a path of least resistance for, that's constructed out of order and clear incentives, like I mentioned. But if you want to be serious about, finances, your efforts, your energies, etc., you're going to have to learn a little something. And it's a lot easier to learn how Bitcoin works than to learn how Federal Reserve swaps work. And like that's just not even scratching the surface of the system that we operate in. So, and the other thing about Bitcoin is like I genuinely feel protected within that system because of the clear, strong boundaries that it provides. Just imagine driving over a really high bridge that's one lane, 9 foot wide, and your car is 8 foot wide. You would feel a little nervous about it. Well, what if we put some guardrails up? Well, you'd feel a lot more confident. And so those guardrails, they make the system, they reinforce the integrity of the system, but they also reinforce the confidence of those participating in the system. So I think it builds on itself in that regard. So you asked a question that was completely unrelated, but I kind of took a wandering route to that. But man, you just talk about real things, and my wife is incredible. She has like core educational content, that she's curated and that we found like works really well to teach our kids to read and stuff like that. But again, you can teach a kid to read, but if they don't have a desire to read, then it can help them, I guess, a little bit later down the line, or right now it checks the block and makes other parents happy that you're not a bad parent. But ultimately what I want to do is I want to teach my kids to read and develop a thirst or hunger to pursue things that interest them, and then also guiding them, hey, what are the consequences of being interested in X versus what can be the benefits of being interested in Y, for example. So just kind of hopefully putting our energy into them in a thoughtful way.
Yeah, opportunity cost is a real thing. Like if you focus your energy on something, you will lose out on even if this is something that's worth pursuing, maybe there's something worth pursuing way more than that. That's a good thing. And I also liked what you talked about Bitcoin, how about the pain, running against the door. And I think more and more people running against that fear door that just does not open, and they don't see the Bitcoin door, and they will try to figure out how to get through a fear door more and more. But more and more people really realize, oh, it's not opening, and they will go through the kind of Bitcoin door. And you also talked before we started the podcast about that you were really interested in power structures. And this is something really interesting, like game theory, power structures, Bitcoin. How do you think will change? How do you think will power structures can change in society? in a family level, but also like on a bigger political level with Bitcoin?
Yeah, man, when I first went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, one of the first things I did is I just consumed all the Bitcoin media that I could. So, pardon me if I'm taking some of these things from, the likes of, Breedlove's Sailor series, which I just consumed relentlessly, and I kept listening because it made sense. I think, in like an information age, things. Another thing, just real quick, just to provide some context. I listened to some Jordan Peterson stuff, and one of the things I thought was super interesting was how he went down on a couple of his talks talking about like IQ. I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but man, there's just certain people. I was in the military, for example. He talks about how the military is used oftentimes to capture like lower IQ people, and provide an meaningful outlet for them, for work and such. And I just think that some people just on the running into the door part, they're going to have somebody gently lead them down the path. Other people are going to, and I'm talking about the power structure of Bitcoin. Bitcoin I've allocated every asset that I can into Bitcoin. Just that's where I'm coming from. Um, I think Bitcoin will win, or I wouldn't make such a bold bet. So I think that you know, um, I think that it's very useful for us as Bitcoiners to reach out to those that we care about and try to gently lead them to those that are willing to have an open ear. Um, but I think by and large, since we're such a small percentage of the population, um, people are just going to continue to see the successes of others that maybe move towards a Bitcoin standard, at least for asset allocation. There's nobody living that was at a, cognitively aware age that has ever seen anything like this happen. I mean, we talk about like the Great Depression and stuff like that. Well, um, you know, like my grandma-in-law, she went through that stuff, but she was a child. She wasn't aware of any of that stuff. I mean, so a lot of those lessons have to be relearned, just like a lot of the lessons of communism and a lot of lessons like that, that people so easily get distracted by rhetoric and Fed speak. They can say, the Federal Reserve can say a lot of things, and eventually you realize, like, man, I keep touching the stove. Maybe I should stop touching the stove, because all it does is erode the return on my labor. But anyways, to go back to power structures, I just think that it's going to be a grind. I like the curve that describes, like the bell curve, if you will, that describes like cypherpunks, early adopters, major adoption, late adopters, so on and so forth. I think that people are just going to be pushed into it. And honestly, the whole reason that Brian and myself started Satsaver, it's I mean, we're doing okay. It's not because um, we, you know, anything other than we want to get people into Bitcoin in a way that is smooth enough that they won't give up, in a way that's removed. So one of our goals, for example, is start to sovereign in 30 minutes, right? So like our goal is to create just what they need to know to help them kind of move down that path. And ultimately, if they're not interested, they're not going to be interested. But our goal is to, use Satsaver, for example, to orange pill people, for people that already have Bitcoin, to secure their seed words with our Satsaver system. And then for people that are new, that you're orange pilling, to have some semblance of a guardrail or a handhold to get from not knowing what it is to being able to purchase it, being able to store it, feeling confident that you've transcribed your seed words in a way that nobody else is going to be able to snatch them from you. Because really, I mean, what's happening right now is you cannot trust the pre-existing systems and structures to manage your financial future any longer. That was an epiphany that I had that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that happened before I went on my Bitcoin journey. And that was like the precipitating, idea that I was just struck with. And anyways, so as far as Satsaver goes, I mean, that's kind of what our goal is to help people to navigate these trying times. But ultimately, I think Bitcoin wins. I think Bitcoin wins because it's a better system. It's not centralized. It's based on rules, not rulers. Systems that have clear rules create an opportunity for people to have success because they know what to expect. I mean, good, strong men make good times. Why do strong men make good times? Because there's a clear expectation of the behavior that's expected in order for you to participate in the market or the society or whatever you want to call it. And upon those foundations, let's say Bitcoin, let's say strong code makes good times, right? So, and upon those foundations, you can start a business with the expectation of serving your clients and not having to fork over the lion's share of your labors to an oppressive regime that could target you however they want to without stating why or whatever it is. But anyways, sorry for the rant. But
It's perfect. I think we can summarize as like Bitcoin is an extreme empowerment to just everybody. It's like not just a specific group. Usually, like a system usually prefers a specific group. If you have the fiat system, the closer you are to the central bank, you prefer like banks and governments and stuff like that. And Bitcoin maybe prefers the group of hardworking people because it's a proof of work. So I don't know, it's a kind of the most fair thing to do, to prefer those who provide the most, I guess.
well, there's also many Bitcoiners themselves that have broken themselves on Bitcoin. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's truth. And what I say by that is like, man, if you make bad decisions, like I don't care if you like Bitcoin, it's still going to keep running according to this, like the rules. If you make bad decisions with your money, if something, regretfully, if something bad happens in your life and you have to sell Bitcoin to cover costs or whatever it is, it's still going to keep churning. But it's also creates an environment that people can depend upon, I guess is what it really boils down to, is that we can depend upon the framework to make our decisions and to pivot, towards something that is the best return on our time and efforts. So that's why I think it wins. And hey, cool ETF, thumbs up. Hopefully they have addresses that show that they're actually holding the Bitcoin in there. At the end of the day, if those Bitcoin gets captured by the state or whatever, all right, well, that just honestly makes free market Bitcoin a little bit more valuable, in my opinion. But anyways, yeah, Bitcoin's exciting. It's super exciting, and people can talk about it nonstop. Thankfully we have Twitter and things like that where we could communicate with other Bitcoiners because there's so few of us, and my goal really is to make getting into Bitcoin accessible for as many people as possible. And just for example, seed word management. There's so many Bitcoiners I know. I'm not going to say any names, but I know Bitcoiners. I know people in the Bitcoin space that have been there, that are well known, that don't custody their own Bitcoin. And it's just something they're just not going to talk about, obviously, because they get a lot of grief for it. But just imagine, Cindy, who's 58 and it works at the grocery store, like she's going to be a little intimidated to put all of her assets into, all of her effort and savings and stuff into something that maybe not all of it, but just a portion of it that's meaningful into some words on a paper. Like ultimately, I think Bitcoin ownership, the fundamental component of Bitcoin ownership is seed word management. So you got to feel confident about it. I remember when I was writing my seeds down the first time, I was sitting in some like back country. We owned some land in Texas, and I was sitting in Nowheresville, and I'm looking over my shoulder, as somebody, I've turned my phone off, I just, it's kind of goofy, but at the end of the day, there's still that anxiety associated with, man, what if I mess it up? But if you don't grab your financial future by the reins and take control of it, like an untrained horse, it's going to run you through the trees and you're going to get beat up by all the branches, and you're going to have to grab the reins and get it under control, or you're just going to be battered.
Self-custody is so important, and it bothers me a lot that still a lot of Bitcoiners, as you said, well-known Bitcoiners that have been in the space for a longer period of time. I have friends that are 100% in Bitcoin, still on their exchanges. And I was like, how can you grasp Bitcoin and don't make the essential step to self-custody? It bothers me a lot how people cannot do it. I had a lot of shitcoin phase. I did a lot of stupid stuff. I needed 3 years from knowing about Bitcoin to getting over the hurdle of it's a scam and getting to the first Bitcoin. But the first thing I did as soon as I got Bitcoin, self-custody, like literally the weekend I got orange pilled. I told this a lot of times on the podcast, so I will not ramp on about that. But basically I thought it was a scam. On Friday, I went into the deep rabbit hole of Bitcoin. End of Sunday, I was like, oh, it's actually something. It's not, it doesn't has to be a scam. So on Monday, I bought my first Bitcoin. And I bought, back in the day, it was a good choice, a ledger, seemingly a good
Yeah,
choice. I
same.
bought a ledger, and I think 3 or 4 days later, I had the ledger, and then I transferred my first like 10 euros on there just to try it out, just to get a
Yeah.
feeling for everything, because I did not knew what I was doing.
I mean,
But
when you did it the first time, I mean, just did you have like a level of anxiety that was like unique? I mean, honestly, it's to me, it just felt unique. Like, I mean, wow, this is serious.
yeah, it was for me because it was not that high of an anxiety level, because I just tried it out with like a really small amount of money. So
Sure.
that's also something I recommend to people when they first
Good
get
point.
into that. Start out with like a really small amount of money just to try
Yeah, definitely
everything
for
out.
your first transactions, of course, too. Moving it from an exchange, absolutely, 100% agree with that. Yeah,
And
and
then,
then when you make that leap to, throwing, I don't know how many sats you're throwing in there, but when you make that leap to going full tilt self custody, there is a level of anxiety associated with it. And
yes,
man, I feel
definitely.
like that is something that, in a lot of ways, it doesn't need to be there. I mean, we don't need to be storing our seed words on a Google Drive. We don't need to be storing our seed words on any like piece of technology. I think it's kind of poetic what the Satsaver is doing, and I mean not cold card, sorry, seed plates. We actually recommend cold card, but seed plates are similar in a sense, but it's kind of poetic that like literally the most robust technological like computing system, the most robust computing system the world has ever seen is um, we're securing our seed words for assets stored on the blockchain or time chain with uh, written word. I mean, it's kind of poetic, and I think it's really great too because it just restores that control back to the individual and the responsibility. I mean, it's a lot of life is about just, hey, you need to take responsibility for your life. You can't just go down through life the way you've been told to. The baby boomers are the last generation, in my opinion, that we're able to get away with that. Literally, I don't want to get too hard on the baby boomers, but I can go for a bit on this. They were handed life on a silver platter, the greatest financial expansion in history. They were the object of everybody's attentions and affections. All marketing pivoted towards the baby boomer. The sexual revolution happened when they hit their sexual prime. The Gen Xers, the latchkey kids, were the product of the baby boomer who was pursuing self-actualization in the workforce. All these things. They bought their first house for 2 sacks of potatoes and a plum, and now it's got 900K gains on it. And you know I watched a Joe Rogan snippet the other day, and it's like, again, I'm not trying to knock all baby boomers. I'm just saying that by and large, like, there's a reason that there are generational stereotypes because they're typically accurate. But it's a way in a lot of ways. The gentleman on Joe Rogan said they've experienced so much life, but they have so little wisdom. And I think in a lot of ways, and that's really raw. I don't want to; those aren't my words, but I'm just saying. In my way, in my opinion, I feel like we have a thirst for wisdom again. Like it's I consider personally, this is kind of my definition I came up with several years back, but I think wisdom is kind of could be thought of as experiential knowledge. We can have knowledge and we can throw it into life and experience it numerous times and actually start to develop a reasonable framework for how to operate within the world. And that's why that's all in the power structures kind of vein as well. For me, that's why I'm really pumped about studying power structures as like a personal hobby. There's a guy going down to the lake right there.
Oh, yeah.
The neighbor. Anyways.
Maybe the question I should have asked at the first as of the first question, what actually is Satsaver for those who don't know Satsaver?
Yeah, so our philosophy for Satsaver is that we want to make Bitcoin accessible. We want to make people get past any of the psychological encumbrances that may be associated with taking self-custody. And the premise, like I stated earlier, is that seed word management is the fundamental step of Bitcoin ownership. If I think if you consider it a checking account, that's just a promise to give you those dollars. You don't have them in your pocket. Hopefully there's not a bank run, right? Because you're not getting those dollars. You're not getting your Bitcoin from FTX or Mt. Gox. I mean, people are getting it back from Mt. Gox and FTX at 16,000 or whatever the rate was. But at the end of the day, you have to deal with a third party. You have to deal with their responsibility. I'll move on. So what we've decided is that, hey, we want to make an educational pathway for people that don't know about Bitcoin. We want to create a way for Bitcoiners to orange pill people. Hey, here's a Satsaver, read through it, take your time, understand it. There's resources on the website that we direct people to go to immediately. Go to the website to get started. And when you do that, you have the ultimate final, kind of product that we offer. And we do offer a free do-it-yourself kit. Like if you've stacked too many sats and you can't afford a Satsaver, we still want you to use our system and maybe you can, iterate on it in your own special way or whatever. But we want to create a system that's usable for people to custody their Bitcoin. That's what you need to do. If you own Bitcoin and it's not in self-custody, you're doing it wrong. That's not the whole point about Bitcoin is to create a system that can operate outside of the normal structures that we've grown accustomed to. So anyways, people have got to learn those lessons themselves, and I'm not going to, you can't make anybody do anything, right? But you can come alongside them and hopefully encourage them to take a path that is more beneficial over the long term. But basically what we do is the encryption guide that we offer in a Satsaver kit. Here's a Satsaver kit. All right. It comes with 3, we call these Satsavers, these cards right here. They're water resistant. It's got 26 spots on it, right? Because we have, if you look on our website, you'll see very clearly, we have a couple of decoy words that are incorporated in this. One of the kind of interesting things, I don't know if you saw in Colorado, a gentleman got pulled over and his seed words were kind of folded up on a piece of paper and the officer was like opening it up and had his body cam and his seed words are right there. And it's like, our goal with Satsaver is that your seed words are safe even if seen. I mean, it's a pretty kind of big statement. Granted, if everybody in the room knows your credit card number, it's probably good to get it changed. I mean, my thing is that you don't have to really rely on clever hiding spots or indestructible materials to protect your seed words. You can encrypt them with the Satsaver system. So we have our encryption guide. I feel like it's pretty well done. It walks you through step by step how to encrypt your seed words. It comes with a BIP39 list. Great. There's a practice card in it. Our premise is that we can create this kit you can hand to people that you could use for yourself, that you can secure your seed words. Maybe you have a trusted person. Like for me, I trust my wife. I want her to know where a Satsaver is. You know, there's a lot of other cool things. If you look satsaver.co, so satsaver.co is our website, and we have /go to get started. We have /pro for some advanced features. Like for example, somebody comes up to me with a club and they say, what's your passphrase or whatever, and they figure out the Satsaver system or whatever. Okay, great. You still have to have a PIN to unlock it. Anyways, I can give them a duress word that leads them to a wallet that has however many you think is enough to dissuade them from pressing you further. I could give one of these to my kids, each of them. I'd have to buy a few, but they can each have their own different PIN word and decrypt the same exact words different ways. It's kind of a neat, there's some neat things, but it's all built upon what Bitcoin already offers us. It's built upon this like really awesome system that I think we're really just beginning to scratch the surface of expanding on. Lightning, an amazing thing. I mean, we're just getting started with the innovation associated with it. But I think Satsaver is an incredibly useful tool. So you don't just have your seed words sitting around. Because I mean, honestly, if I find your seed plate, I'll figure it out. I think it does. I guess given enough time, there's like 3 billion plus ways it could be decrypted. But I guess given enough time, maybe somebody sets up some software or something to decrypt it faster. At least it provides a layer of complexity for me to move stuff around. And I don't just have, one, comes with 3. I could put them in different places, give them different people, or whatever. So it's intended to be kind of like an all-in-one seed word solution. But you can do different things with it too, man. I'd love to talk to somebody doing seed plates and say, hey, let's make one with a couple extra lines on it, and let's include the Satsaver process as well. But at the end of the day, I think it's a great opportunity for people for the 3 reasons that I said before. To start with Bitcoin, to share Bitcoin, and to secure your own seed words in a responsible and way that you can feel confident in.
I'm super excited to announce that this podcast got the first ever sponsor. 21 Bitcoin is Bitcoin only from day one, and they teach and preach self-custody. This is my go-to exchange when someone asks me, oh, where can I buy my Bitcoin from? This is the easiest entry for Bitcoiners. And if you want lower fees, plus at the same time support this podcast, use code Robin and click the link in the description. Yeah, it's fascinating for me because that is another great system how people can self-custody their Bitcoin. And there are a lot of different great tools out there how to keep your Bitcoin safe. There are a lot of services, educational content out there, how to keep it safe. It's like there are channels only about that out there, and people still don't do it. What do you think keeps people from self-custodying their Bitcoin? What do we have to do better in educating them, making tools? Or is it something that will never be a mass adoption, will always be for a smaller group of people?
I think that I saw this, I guess we'd call it a meme, yesterday, and it had this adoption curve. And there was just one line down the middle, and it said, on the left, buy Bitcoin, and on the right, work for Bitcoin. And I think people are going to have Bitcoin. Maybe not. Maybe it's not. Maybe not everybody. But the people that are intellectually capable of taking responsibility for their life are going to kind of hopefully be forced into it. Not hopefully be forced into it. Hopefully realize the benefits that it provides, and if they're forced into it by their own decision making, is what I'm saying. You run into a wall too many times. You're going to learn a lesson not to run in the wall. But how do you get people to do it? I operate on this. I guess it's kind of like a non-coercion principle. I think a non-coercion principle is really healthy. Like, listen, if I walk up to you every time you slap me in the face, I'm gonna stop walking up to you. That's a free market, and it's natural law. It's just the way people operate. You can argue and debate about how systems should be and controlled, but at the end of the day, if you give me half the potatoes that I pay for every time, I'm just gonna go somewhere else and get my potatoes somewhere else, right? That's I have the freedom to operate the way I want to. And so, you know, first of all, people have to get to a pain point where it becomes important enough for them to manage their finances that they're willing to do it, right? I think a lot of that is happening right now. I feel like we're watching financial repression, as Lynn Alden talks about. Um, Financial repression is the means by which governments. I'm not trying to misquote her per se, or technically, if I don't get it exactly right, but is a way that governments outsource their obligations to their people. They cut off the escape valves, Executive Order 6102, previously through history, mandated currencies and so on and so forth. Genghis Khan offered utilized paper money when people would travel on the Silk Road and do trading. Merchants would have to turn in their gold and use the currency that was permitted. Anyway, so people are going to either have to feel it and understand the importance of taking responsibility for their own life, or people are going to have some kind of epiphany like I did. And I think a lot of that, honestly, is because I have a lot of responsibilities. So I spend a lot, like with my family, for example. So I spend a lot of mental energy considering how I can best provide for my family and take responsibility. It's like one of those, I don't know if this is a quote, but I kind of think it should be: heavy burdens make strong shoulders. So you're either going to be crushed under the weight of it or you're going to make a way, right? And so, yeah, how do we get more people to do it? You can't make people do anything. We can continue to, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. There's a word. So I read the Bible. There's a word in the Bible. It talks about servant or a shepherd, or to minister, and it's dioxos, and it means to kick up dust. I can't just stand up looking down at people and say, I see what you're doing wrong. You should do this and you should do that. What I do need to do is, if I, through my life experience, have experienced something similar, maybe I can come down beside them, and I see that they have something going on in their life. I can come down beside them and I can try to help lead them towards a solution that's beneficial for them. Solution, and take the time to explain it to them in a way that they understand. I can't be pushy with it. If somebody doesn't want to hear what you have to say, don't get your feelings hurt. Don't let other people, don't get your validation from others. I mean, that sounds kind of rough, but it's true. Like I want to, if I want to be maximally good to people, I need to be able to interact with them without worrying, without basing my message, the value of my message, on what they think. So I think it's going to take a lot of effort for us to come alongside other people genuinely and take the time. It's kind of tricky. Like my mom, she's probably gonna watch this, but I've tried to talk to my mom about Bitcoin so many times, but there in families, there's baggage in those relationships. You hear this all the time about Bitcoiners. You have the meme where the white guy in the attic, like the ghostly looking figure up in the attic, he can't come down because he told everybody to buy Bitcoin at the top, like I did, and many of us have. And he feels a little bit embarrassed, and everybody's laughing at him. But at the end of the day, just caring about people. If it matters enough to you, you'll find a way. And you can't force people to do it, but hopefully you can create a meaningful way to connect with people enough that they understand that you're coming at them from a genuine perspective.
It's fascinating how Bitcoin teaches you to have your own responsibility, because everybody that has been in Bitcoin for the last, I don't know, 3, 5, 10 years has been humbled so many times. Maybe they have been
Yes.
involved in some hack from an exchange. Maybe they have been involved in, because you said it earlier, like with Celsius and stuff like that, or Mount Gox. I heard from some friends that were involved in Celsius that they are now starting to pay out a little bit again from that it has been
I
lost.
saw that Yellow said that he was getting paid.
Yeah,
I saw him memeing about it the other day.
that's amazing. And also the crashes alone, even if you do the custody completely right and you never lose it, you never were involved in any hack or something like that, and that's really rare, I think. If you
Yeah.
never were involved in that, at least if you're long in the game, even if you do that, you go through so many 80% crashes, 50%
Yeah.
crashes, and then
The
the
volatility of a monetizing, like the monetization of Bitcoin, um, the volatility is just incredible. Especially when you got these like super sophisticated systems that are just jumping on every trend and maximizing it and stuff. I mean, yeah, it steals your mind, in a sense of strengthens it. If you're it tests your convictions. It's called Bible reference. It's called proving. Like it proves you. So that's a good thing, because we're even more convicted and we're more empowered. But yeah, I agree. I've felt the pain, but it's also yeah, it's pain in the near term. We have to have that kind of low time preference that we talk about a lot in Bitcoin. It's funny. There's like it's almost like the topics in Bitcoin are very cyclical because they touch on so many aspects of what ultimately matters in a lot of these conversations is human nature. I mean, that's why we have Bitcoin. We have Bitcoin because human nature is inherently attempting to get as much as it can for the least amount of effort possible. And some people, they don't have any like moral anchoring to their decision making, so they like take advantage of people, right? They inflate the currency away, or they steal from other people, or they hurt other people to get what they want. And then other people, that are willing to, have moral bearing and boundaries and stuff. They have to pursue life from a different angle, and I think that's actually a more robust way, but it's a lower time preference way, and all these types of things that ultimately are are nuanced because we're dealing in the realm of human nature, which is exciting too.
it's fascinating. And I saw now, like you mentioned, like 2 3 times a Bible reference, and it's fascinating for me also to see Bitcoiners are really religious usually. Not everybody, of course. There are like
Sure.
Bitcoiners is now like such a big group where there is all kinds of people in there. I was my last meetup, I think in Austria, where there was in front of me to the left a complete carnivore that only ate meat, and to the right of him was a raw vegan. And it was lovely to see that in the Bitcoin community, Bitcoin unites us, and they like discussed about food and nutrition, and they had a lot of similar things going on, like fresh food, cook yourself, stuff like that. And yeah, but the point I wanted to go to is like, what do you see as the connection between religion and Bitcoin? Do you see there a special connection, or is it just like two completely different topics for you?
I feel like, again, back to a statement that I made earlier, is that we're seeking truth. And so my spiritual convictions were present. I had to go on my own journey there. That was an incredibly powerful journey for another conversation, maybe. But you can live a lie, right? Or you can learn how the system really works and prepare accordingly, right? If you live a lie, you can either be a victim or you can be dominating or part of a structure or system that's intended to dominate other people and you know um, get the most amount that you can for the least amount of work, right? So you have like agricultural kind of when did like the roving bands of warriors start? Well, very quickly after agriculture gained its firm traction in societies because people were able to set aside goods and resources and hoard them and save them. And then all I need is a sword. or fire or a group of friends or just, people with similar interests. So if you're going to live a lie, you can either be a victim or dominate people. If you can live truth, right, you're going to say, hey, I can't be a victim because ultimately that's my decision to be a victim or not. And, hey, a lot of people have differing opinions about religion. I'm firmly convicted in my decisions. But at the end of the day, I think we're all seeking for truth, and you have a subset or a section of society that's in Bitcoin that's on, this half of the curve. And I would say that it's not even, I would say it's more on the tails, to be quite honest. People that are not willing to like live a lie or intentionally fool themselves. One reason that, like, for example, back to my family, they always ask, um, this is a perfect analogy, but they ask, would you like to know the gender? And it's like, I'm like, listen, if somebody knows the gender, it's going to be me. So I figured out how to read sonograms. Done enough of them. But my thing is I don't want there to be a truth out there that I don't access because I'm too lazy to, or because living it's so, what's the opposite of truth? Untruth, right? So it could be like layers. It doesn't have to be like a direct lie that's incredible, like directly oppositional to what you say, but it just is not truth. So I don't want to like live according to untruths when I know that there's a truth. And then as these things come up, you begin to establish your own pathway in life that's led by your convictions and the work that you've done, or maybe like Brian is an incredibly brilliant guy, my very close friend and business partner with Satsaver. This guy is just brilliant, man. Brian tells me anything about diet. Brian tells me anything about like a number of topics. I honestly, I trust you so much that I'm going to take your word for it. Cause I mean, he doesn't expect me to do that because he, like I said before, he'll take the time to explain to me, but I'm like, man, that's great. I love it. Thank you for shortening the learning curve for me. And when you can create like those types of healthy relationships where you have trust that can make your life magnified even more, just like what I want to build with my family, for example. But yeah, I think Bitcoiners are religious. I think they're seeking for truth, and maybe they're anti-religious because they're ultimately seeking for truth, and that's where that's led them heretofore. And a lot of reasons that you know people have baggage in their lives, and and that can shape the way that we live our lives if we haven't dealt with that baggage. And a lot of people have baggage in their life about how to handle finances, and a lot of people have baggage in their life about their diet. A lot of people have baggage in their life about their medical decisions. A lot of people have baggage in their life on fill in the blank. And if you're not willing to take, the reins on those individual things, or have trusted people that can, be your multi-sig and help you kind of work through things together, then you're basically saying, I'm willing to, you can't know everything, but I'm willing to not search out this answer that is materially important to my life. And again, like I said, you can't know everything, but you also need to take responsibility for your life. And I think that's the type of a personality that these like earlier Bitcoiners maybe are manifesting in one sense or another. Maybe wrong, but just a thesis.
Yeah, I mean, on the topic of truth, I actually have some kind of personal news. Some even know it. I actually today quit for good my normal job because I wanted to dedicate my full life now to Bitcoin. And thanks to
Yes.
21 Bitcoin, who sponsors this podcast, and other Bitcoin companies I can work with, I can do that. So this allowed me to do exactly that step. But it, like, the last year was difficult for me because I was like going towards more and more the Bitcoin way, and seeing more and more Bitcoin as the the thing I should focus 100% of my time on, because we are so early. It's like getting involved in the internet like in 1995, something like that.
Yes.
And I was like, but I wanted to do it right. So I wanted to do it slowly and steadily and right, not just rash into it. I'm not the guy that rash into things. Like I want to do steady and good. And so I'm finally now at this point where I'm like, I quit and I love my job actually. It's like a really good one. It's like it's just the topic was not right. It was IT
Yeah.
security, and I love Bitcoin. So it was just the wrong topic. The employees around me was amazing. The boss was there than me in my friends and family circle, because it was a really good one. But
Yeah.
for me, it was the truth that Bitcoin is the thing that I want to focus on. And when this the truth is, and you seek truth, and most Bitcoiners seek the truth, then you have to go for it, even if you have to sacrifice something, even have to go through a route that maybe is a little bit more not so sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to throw that in
I
because
think
you
that's
might.
an exciting thing. I'm super excited for you. And you know what? There's no telling where it'll go. You're going to have to make your best decision as you travel down that. But I think one of the most exciting things about it in our like high time preference world, a lot of people pursue things that they're passionate about, right? And then also in this world, there's almost a dichotomy. Maybe they have two different lives running. They have something that they're passionate about, and then they have something they do for money. Like that's their purpose. I earn money doing it. Now, the real magic happens when you can blend passion and purpose. That's
Yeah,
where you find, in my opinion, the exciting springboard, both intellectually, motivationally, and then wonderful things happen when you're pursuing something that not only is purposeful, but you're passionate about. So that's really exciting to hear. And I've really enjoyed watching your content, especially on Twitter too. I love how you post everything there. Makes it so cool. But so I'm excited. That's great news to hear.
I'm also excited. It's like it felt really freeing. Also, it was not that I was kept somewhere, but it was not living up to my fullest truth. And it's I loved what you were saying about religion and Bitcoin, how Bitcoiners and also religion is like that, finding your truth and sticking to it. Yeah. And maybe to round up the podcast, we're having an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking the next guest the question, and they're going from various topics, sometimes really philosophical, sometimes it's just about some technical questions. And now we have, I think for the first time, an obvious question that nobody asked till now. I think we have some similar questions in the past. It's like, what it's crazy that question is not coming up till now, but what's your price prediction for the next bull cycle, for this bull cycle?
Ooh, man, price for either I'm going to be a hyper bull or I'm going to be too bearish, right?
Yes.
So, let's say we have three greens, one red. I think that we're going to be in a sustained bull cycle for it. One of my family members that told me about Bitcoin in 2013, really great guy. I said no. He's like, dude, let me give you just give me like $1,000. I'll buy some Bitcoin for you. Anyways, bad decision. I didn't follow through on that, but I was very prideful and I was stuck in my place at the time. He said, I talked to him a couple years back. He said this a couple years back. He said, I don't even look at the price anymore. And I'm not going to lie. I look at the price. I can go for months without looking at the price, but when there's price action, I'm looking at it. That being said, man, I hate to make predictions. However, I think that I don't even know. Let's say a year from now. What time target are we talking about?
End of the bull cycle.
Okay, end of the bull cycle. I mean, I think that, I mean, when is the bull cycle considered over? I mean, I just think that we've crossed the Rubicon, if you will. I think that it's kind of like, I think that there's going to be drawdowns because some weird, geopolitical things are going to happen where government says, like this whole mining business where they're trying to stop Bitcoin miners are making them register and blah blah blah. If they really try to choke down our throats this like climate change garbage, and say that it's better to release methane into the atmosphere than carbon dioxide, then that could be a bummer, But I think that we're going to be, in a bull cycle, kind of potentially moving forward, and I think that we might see some price discovery coming up maybe in the next like 2 years that's just going to melt faces. And then maybe 3 years, who knows? And then I think there's just going to be a continuously trudging upwards of the Bitcoin price. Shoot, I'd love to see any big number. Hal calling 10 million, you know, 1 million's out there. I think that so I guess time frames are really what would be required for me to determine. I'd shoot $1 trillion Bitcoin.
It's a question that I would never ask myself, because for me it's like the Bitcoin price on its fundamental thing. It does not matter, because we are doing Bitcoin because we don't want fiat. Why should we
Sure.
measure Bitcoin in fiat then? But it makes it's a lot of fun, and newbies are coming in because of number go up technology. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to say this. I believe that there's going to be a material price increase where people right now are going to get a lot more purchasing power of the dollar, like of the dollar denominated Bitcoin value. And then I think it's going to just continue to go up in a lot of ways because inflation, right? So I think that like a lot of price discovery is going to happen because the system is growing, and there are so many more people that want Bitcoin, and there's so many people that like have deeper pockets that want Bitcoin, and not even enough Bitcoin for all the millionaires to have one. So I think that there's going to be a chunk of time that happens when the price of Bitcoin moves up significantly more rapidly, and that'll probably happen within the next, 3 to 5 years, probably sooner. I would hope it's sooner, but then I just don't know what these nation states are thinking right now. I mean, what are they even thinking? I mean, this is like kind of like a somewhat. I mean, nothing's incorruptible, but I mean, maybe Bitcoin. It's like a system that they're literally going to be brought under the hand, if you will, of the network in a lot of ways. And then I think if as long as these money printers continue to run, then I think the purchasing power will not necessarily increase, but the number go up will continue. So that's my point. I think that we're going to see a massive appreciation. And so, like, for example, how much does a stake cost now? I think we're going to be able to get for our Bitcoin. We're not going to be able to get like same cost of stake. I think we're going to be able to buy 1,000 stakes, right? But then past a certain point, I think that it's going to be okay. I'm going to be able to buy 1,000 stakes or whatever the big number is, right? But those stakes are going to cost so much more than they did previously. So I don't know. Who knows? That's a hard question to ask, because I do think $1 million Bitcoin is in play for sure. That's not
Yeah.
even. I totally believe that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, really good, because there's like two things to it. First, the Bitcoin network is growing and sucking up more financial energy from all the assets. And then there is, when you measure it just in the fiat terms, there's inflation, because they have to print more every year. This cycle will only be more and more vicious. And so the price just has to go up in terms of the US dollar denomination, but also it will go up in purchasing power.
I think too that could be delineated in maybe another point that I made, and maybe they don't like go hand in hand here. But there's people that are going to have this epiphany and seek out a better return or a better opportunity, or they're willing to take responsibility before they're forced to take responsibility. They're willing to take responsibility for their life, and maybe those people are going to get into the first wave where you actually can increase the amount, like your purchasing power actually goes up. And then there's other people that are going to just be drugged behind, that are going to just, they're going to, yeah, number is going to go up, but it's going to be in relative terms to actually like goods, services, commodities in the marketplace.
It's I think it's a great way also to end the podcast. And before we completely sign off, is there anything you want to add to our podcast, or where can people find you the best? Where can people get in touch with you?
Yes, satsaver.co is our website. So if you're interested in any of this and or any of the concepts that we talked about regarding seed word management, the fundamental step of owning Bitcoin is to manage your seed words in a responsible way. Check us out at satsaver.co. If you stack too many sats, like I said, we'll give you a free DIY kit. Just download it. And you can iterate on that if you like. You can always reach out to us. You can email JD at satsaver.co, Brian, Brian, at Satsaver. And, I'm on Twitter. I try to make some, content for our Satsaver account. And I'm Lott_JD on Twitter. So LOTT_JD on Twitter if you want to reach my personal account. But man, I apologize for ranting, but B, I really appreciated being on your podcast because I've enjoyed watching the content that you've created, and I envision a successful pursuit for you because you take what you're doing seriously, and that's kind of the world that we're entering into. Where if you take your life seriously and you're willing to live with integrity on a Bitcoin standard, you're even rewarded more so for doing that. So best wishes to you, and it was great to take the time to speak with you today. I hope it provided value for you as well.
Thank you for JDI. It's also amazing for me because I have almost every day a guest. Like I push out 5 podcasts a week, but 1 or 2 usually like postpone it. And it's like I want to be sure. So I have 7 podcast recordings
Yeah.
usually per week. And so talking with another human being, and we never spoke before the podcast with each other. And you learn always something new. You get a new perspective. You get some new words, some new lines, some new perspective, some new anything from a person, and it just makes the learning curve so much better. And I started with November the podcast. Now it's February, so it's not a long time. But you're my 53rd guest already, and there's so much learning that happen and so much things you learn also about yourself, about the guest, and about Bitcoin, and about life in general. So I'm glad to be on that journey, and thank you, JD, for being my guest, and I hope we can repeat that in the future.
Keep stacking sats.
Definitely. Bye bye. Perfect.